قريبا هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود ذلك مثلهم في التوراة ومثلهم في الإنجيل كزرع أخرج شطأه فآزره فاستغلظ فاستوى على سوقه يعجب الزراع ليغيظ بهم الكفار وعد الله الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات منهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما صدق الله العظيم.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. That was very beautiful, mashallah. So before we begin, I'd like to let you guys all know that this is an introduction to our third annual Islamic Sisters Convention this weekend. It's going to be starting tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the morning at the University of Minnesota, and we're also going to be having registration in the other masjid throughout the evening. So if you already purchased your tickets, you can get your wristbands right now, or you can go ahead and go purchase it. Tonight we have our very own Sheikh Aysha Wazwaz here to join us. She's going to be speaking about the benefits of the Quran, which is also the theme of the convention this weekend. She's going to give us a short talk about the benefits of the Quran, and then she's going to be answering questions that you guys have all been submitting throughout the week. And you still have the opportunity to go ahead and submit questions on our Slido, sli.do, and the event code is D207 if you would like to submit any questions you have. Sheikh Aysha Wazwaz, to introduce her, she was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Her family moved back to Jerusalem, Palestine after graduating from high school, and she went on to study Islamic law at Al-Quds University. She then later moved back to the United States to complete her MA and been living here ever since. The Sheikh is a specialist in Islamic law and contemporary Islamic studies. She holds a BA in Islamic law, an MA in contemporary Islamic studies, and a PhD candidate in Islamic studies.
Candidate? I finished.
Oh, you finished? Oh, she finished, mashallah. She graduated with her PhD. Sheikh Aysha is currently teaching. I know, my reference must be old. Sheikh Aysha is currently teaching fiqh in various fields such as family fiqh, fiqh of worship, and other topics such as Islam for teenagers, introduction to Islamic legislator, morals and behaviors in Islam, tajweed, all of that at Gems of Light here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She has held women's halaqas both in the United States and Masjid al-Aqsa for various years and has lectured in several conferences and events. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Sheikh Aysha Wazwaz.
Well, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. I'm excited about the questions and answers, I guess more than the lecture, but I will still give the lecture because of its importance. The topic is the importance of memorizing Quran and the importance of learning the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ثُمَّ أَوْرَثْنَا الْكِتَابَ الَّذِينَ اصْطَفَيْنَا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. Pause right here. What is this ayah referring to? In the midst of all the different waves of fitna that we're seeing at colleges, schools, around the peers, there's always the question that pops up: how can I hold on to my Islam in the midst of all this wave? This wave is so strong that at many times we're starting to see what the Prophet ﷺ had actually talked about at one point, and said that there's going to come a time where people will wake up as believers and sleep as non-believers, or sleep as non-believers and wake up as believers. And this is exactly the time that we're in. We're starting to see a trend of people leaving Islam, a trend of people leaving hijab, a trend of people not ever coming back to the masjid. And unfortunately, it's not just layman Muslims, but it's right now, even the so-called dua, right now, finding justifications in making new interpretations for Islam, and then eventually call it Islam. Where did it begin? It really began when people didn't really hold on to the source of ilm. And there's no better source of ilm than number one, Quran. The Prophet ﷺ said, when he died, I had left two things. If you hold on to them, you will not be going astray. And that is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the prophetic tradition that he had left. And that's where I started my lecture with ثُمَّ أَوْرَثْنَا الْكِتَابَ الَّذِينَ اصْطَفَيْنَا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. Those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had chosen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given them the most important inheritance, the most important heritage, and that is only given to those that are chosen from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's servants. What? Il-Kitab. Il-Kitab is Al-Quran. In the midst of all this, we're looking for chosen people. And if you want to be part of the chosen people, you have to take the step. You have to take the step to start with your road to connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your road to connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because without connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by taking those times to read and study the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're not going to realize but that gravity of the fitan taking you farther and farther away. And that's where, without you realizing, you're going to start to replace the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the connection with people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تُطِعْ, and don't follow those whose hearts have been pacified away from dhikr. What is dhikr? Dhikr is really, the highest dhikr is really the Quran. If their hearts have been pacified away from the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't follow them. Replace those friends with other friends. What's going to happen to those people that waste their time on trivial talk and different kinds of lives? They're actually وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. They're going to go into an inclination, and that is going to take them into a slippery slope, and that's going to go farther and farther because they didn't realize the main principle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had set. And they're going to start getting farther and farther away. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ actually says that every group of people that sit in the masjid to learn the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they would study it, the malaika are going to mention their names in the heavens And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ is telling you that the malaika will be surrounding these people, and then they will feel the beautification of khashya, of the closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a high spirituality, and they will see and feel the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surrounding them, and it will comfort them. Right now, the most thing that people are talking about is mental illness and depression. And that's probably the most thing that is on the rise right now within even the Muslim community. I'm not saying that mental illness and depression is not related to other things, whether it's life, trauma, different chemical imbalances in the brain. I know that that's real. But the biggest reason for the rise of depression and mental illnesses that we're getting is really a result. وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى قال رب لما حشرتني أعمى وقد كنت بصيرا قال كذلك أتتك آياتنا فنسيتها وكذلك اليوم تنسى. The main reason, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and whoever leaves and turns their back on the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and on dhikr, فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا, then they will be suffering in a life full of danka. What is danka? Danka is pretty much like depression. You've got so many doors, you're not sure which door and which exit to take. So you take this door and then you decide, oops, I took the wrong path. And then you take a wrong door again, and then a wrong door again, and then a wrong door again. And you find yourself going into circles. And you find yourself going into different routes where you're just hitting yourself against a closed wall. Why? Because kana amruhu furuta. Because they didn't have a principle to guide them to the right path. So they ended up following their own inclination. They ended up following their own inclination, but their own inclination does not have the power to guide them to the right path. So they end up going into so many different doors, so many different routes, and then they end up getting lost. And then they'll come to you and say, I'm actually facing depression. I'm going into traumas and mental illnesses and all that. It really all, and at least most of it, began when it was going into the wrong direction. I don't want to say all mental illness is related to that. I understand that some of it is medical, chemical imbalances and all those different things. But one main reason why it's on the rise is really people turned away from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what I mean by turned away from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only reading it and memorizing it, but also applying it. Because dhikr, in order for you to stay connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you really need to know, so what are the principles? You need to get a torch to see the path. And that torch is really the Quran, to help you identify right from wrong, to help you identify who you are, where you're going, and what you are. Because if you don't know who you are and where you are going in this life, do you really know what you're doing in this world? Do you really know your purpose of life? There's absolutely no way that you can know your purpose of life unless you had divine connection. And divine connection is nothing but through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Quran. Because you want to remember that life began, and the purpose of life began before life was created. You know what that means? That actually means that purpose of life, science cannot help us understand the purpose of life. Science can only tell us how things function, not why they function. And life, and the purpose of life preceded the existence of life. In order to understand the existence and the purpose of life and what you're supposed to be doing in life and the principle that you want to live based on, you need to connect yourself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you need to connect yourself with Quran. But when we say connect yourself with Quran, you need to connect also yourself with a group of people that are always studying the Quran in order to stay connected with a group that's connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have a support group. And there's no better support group than a group of Quran and people that are connected with dhikr all the time. Connect with your nearest duksi, with your nearest group that are learning how to read the Quran and memorize the Quran in order to learn what the words are saying, and in order to know what you're supposed to be doing, and in order to be enlightened about who you are, where you're going, and why you were created. That's in general. It will need lots of patience. It will need lots of times. I remember when I was trying to memorize the Quran, I was actually crying almost every single day. I wanted to do it every single day. I tried and I tried so hard, but every single day it was crying so hard, but you still had to do it. It was connecting you. There's no way that you can actually get to the dhikr or that level of khashya unless you actually planted. And it takes a long time to plant. Allah says, the words of the Quran are thaqeel, the words of the Quran are heavy. Zayd ibn Thabit said that whenever the Quran would be revealed on the Prophet ﷺ while he was sitting on the camel would collapse on the ground because the words are so heavy. That's the camel collapsing. How is it with our hearts? How is it with our hearts? It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of, let me call it tahliyah. It's going to take a lot of abandoning from dunya, because you cannot have in your Quran, in your heart, the love for Quran and the love for dunya. They can't combine. You can't combine these two. In order to do that hifz and that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you need to empty your heart from a lot of different things that don't belong with the Quran. Start with the questions.
Okay.
Hold on. Go ahead.
They wanted to do a IG live for the Q&A.
It's okay.
Is that okay with you? If you don't want to, that's fine.
I prefer that the girls see my
Okay.
face.
That's fine. You don't want to do it.
You can put on them if you want.
Oh, you want to do it facing or facing here?
But can you make it just sound?
You can make it to face like here.
Okay, go ahead. Under the table?
No, my phone's under the table. Oh, okay. Sorry, because her phone locked.
So if you want certain questions to go first, put a like on the questions. So question number 1.
Okay, the first question is it allowed to touch the kitab and read the Quran when you're on your period?
So the first question is it allowed to touch the Quran when you're on your period? This is one of the most common questions that I actually get. Let me, because we've got almost 20 questions here, I'm going to try to be as brief as I can. All right. Now, scholars had different opinions on this question. on whether a woman during her menstruation can touch the Quran or not. And some scholars said that yes, she can touch the Quran. Others said that she cannot touch the Quran or even read the Quran. Let me, okay, this needs let me fix this. You guys, please pay attention because there's going to be a lot of mentioning evidences and different addendum. Number one is that the ayah that both of the scholars, both sides that said that yes, she can read the Quran, and the scholars that said that no, she cannot read the Quran when she has her period, really depended on the same evidences pretty much. The first evidence is from the Quran, لا يمسه إلا المطهر. That ayah means that no one shall touch it unless those that are pure. But scholars had different opinions on whether the pronoun it is referring for Lawh al-Mahfuz or whether it's referring to Quran. If it's referring to Lawh al-Mahfuz, that means it's talking about the Malaika. If it's referring to Quran, that means it's talking about anybody that has major impurity that requires washing, complete washing, or minor impurity that would require wudu. Now, the third opinion said she can read based on her memory, read from her memory. And though that opinion was actually held by a number of scholars, especially in Malikiya, they also said that if she's doing it for the sake of seeking ilm, or she's trying to memorize and review and all that she can actually do. And that was the opinion of Sa'id ibn Musayyib as well, that if she's actually seeking ilm and she's trying to keep up with her memorization. What is the preponderant ruling that I consider? Wallahu a'lam. She can read the Quran and she can even touch the Quran even if she was on her period. Why? This is an opinion that was mentioned by Ibn Hazm and a number of other scholars, very few, and the majority of the scholars actually said she cannot touch the Quran when she has her period. I'm aware of that, that's the majority of the scholars, but the reason why I don't consider that as the preponderant ruling is for the following. Number one, لا يمسه إلا المطهرون, different opinions between scholars on that, on what it's referring to. Number two is that the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says that I do not permit this Quran for a woman, for a person in a state of janaba, meaning after intimacy or during a period that they're not permitted to relate with it, is actually a hadith daif. That hadith is actually daif. And the third supporting evidence is that if a woman is not allowed to touch the Quran, and the Prophet ﷺ had 9 wives, if we wanted to excel Salama or remove Salama and consider that she had probably passed her menopause, that leaves the rest of the wives were actually menstruating. Why don't we have a single hadith that is actually authentic to say that women should not touch the Quran while they had their periods? And the Prophet ﷺ was reading the Quran on all fi kulli ahayinah, or at different times. So in the Sayyidah Aysha was 18 years old when the Prophet ﷺ had died. In other words, she did not yet even get close to her menopause. And if not touching the Quran was the preponderant ruling, then at least we should have had some authentic evidences that prevent women from reading the Quran, even though the Quran was actually being revealed. But not having any authentic evidences actually leaves it, and I consider Ibn Hazm's opinion on this as actually the strongest opinion relating this issue. And the fourth evidence that I consider is that if women were not allowed to touch the Quran during their cycle, or even make salah and make siyam, all that, and you're avoiding women from reading Quran or even that dhikr, how much is left in a woman in a woman's life to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if not even reading Quran, not even Salah? Salah, there's no doubt about it. This is a hadith, authentic hadith, that women during their Salah, during their cycles, they don't do Salah, and don't do Siyam, and don't do Tawaf. All this is with authentic evidences. But when it comes to Quran, that's where we don't see strong evidences. But keep it in mind, majority of scholars did say otherwise. Go ahead. Majority of scholars, by the way, when we say majority of scholars, not because it's the majority of the scholars saying a certain opinion, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is a stronger ruling. It doesn't mean that so. The evidences and the preponderant opinion is weighed based on the evidences, not how many people say what. Question number 2.
Nowadays we hear hijabi model, hijabi dancer, hijabi soccer player, and so on. Is just covering your head or neck, head to your neck, enough to consider hijab?
Hijab actually has different conditions and different conditions and regulations. So it's not just covering your head or covering your hair, but there are actually a number of rulings that relate to it. Hijab is in behavior as well, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ فَيَطْمَعَ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَضٌ. So even when we talk about the sound, the voice, and how she's using her voice, or even the behavior and how she's relating with the world around her, that's also part of hijab. So it's not just covering, just getting some kind of a cloth and covering it with your hair. That's not the only thing about hijab. Hijab has akhlaq, has a behavior. Hijab includes clothing. Hijab includes how you use your mouth, how you talk, your voice tone. All that is considered part of the behavior. Now, hijab actually means modesty. All right? Hijab means modesty. And modesty, the Prophet ﷺ, in a number of ahadith, I don't have time to go all over the ahadith, that hijab has certain conditions. Number 1, it's covering all the body. Face and hands, different opinions between scholars. I regard it sunnah, not obligatory. 2, it's covering all the body where it doesn't shape the body. So not shaping the body, where in fact the Sahabiya, when the Prophet ﷺ knew that another Sahabi had, he got a cloth, like a fabric, some kind of fabric, and that fabric was the kind of fabric that was very, very soft. And the Prophet ﷺ ordered him that if his wife wears it, that she would wear something underneath. Why? In order not to show her figure. So if that type of clothing is revealing the figure, then that would actually be not hijab. Number 3 is that it's not fragrance. Number 4 is that even if it's hijab, if that type of hijab is worn by a group of deviated groups, let's say, for example, nuns. I used to live in Palestine at one point, and there are nuns, Orthodox Christian Orthodox, that wore hijabs better than our hijabs. And this is real. You know what? Even Hasidic Jewish women would actually cover in black from head to toe. Kind of like the Saudi women, you know how they dress? This is real. I used to live right in the old city, and my house was right next to the Jewish quarter, or what is called the Jewish quarter. Before it used to be called Hart al-Sharfa, which means the neighborhood of honor. All right? And the women would come passing by, and we would know they're Jewish women from the children that are holding their hands. They would be, the Orthodox Jewish guys. They would be dressed in black head to toe. If that type of clothing, we were able to identify this is Jewish, this is Orthodox Christian, then as a Muslim woman, you can't dress like that. Even if that was a deviated Muslim group. So let's say some kind of a trend for Muslim girls that were part of some kind of a rock and roll group. That's a deviated group. You can't dress like that. All right? You can't dress like that. A Muslim, the whole idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to be as a Muslim is that you're unique. You're unique in your identity. You're unique in the principle that you carry. You're unique as a Muslim. You're different. Be confident. For the other condition for hijab is that it would not be men's clothing. Would not be a men's attire. Known within that community that this is a men's attire. All right? So those are general things. Now, for the issue of is it just covering the head and going to boxing or going into fencing or etc. One, if that clothing is shaping the body, then that would not be permissible. Whether you became famous or not, it doesn't necessarily mean that, yeah, it's permissible and we're so happy about hijabi being on some kind of a magazine or hijabi being some kind of a sport, etc. If that sport is witnessed where your body is revealed by the movement of it. So you're running, you're playing basketball in your hijab, even if it's this Somali hijab right there, and your body is running and all these guys are watching you, hijab is supposed to be covering. But while you are running, it's doing the opposite of covering. You guys understand what I'm saying? If you are running, it's doing the opposite of covering. And the Prophet ﷺ forbid and did not allow women to participate in jihad. And this is, we're calling jihad, okay? And the Prophet ﷺ didn't have women participate in jihad, even though, when you're talking about Nusayb al-Maziniya, she was actually a very tough woman, right? The Prophet ﷺ didn't allow women to participate in jihad because it actually contradicts the attire, it contradicts their safety, it contradicts the main meaning of hijab, which is that it reveals modesty. If it's going to reveal other things while she's running, while she's getting out of the water and it's covering and shaping all her body, that contradicts hijab.
It says, what good is free will if everything is predestined? If Allah already knows if we're going to heaven or hell, why doesn't Allah just put us there?
Do it again. Say the question again.
What good is free will if everything is predestined? If Allah already knows if we're going to heaven or hell, why doesn't Allah just put us there?
Okay, so if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knows what decisions we're going to make in our free will. Ladies, pay attention to this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-adil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just. He will not hold you accountable unless you take action, unless you do something. So why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala test us? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not force you into doing something. But because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beyond time, what does that mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you live within a dimension of place and time. Do you know what's going to happen tomorrow? No, you don't. But guess what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beyond time, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created time. So to God Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's beyond time, 6,000 years from now and 12,000 years from now is all known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not within the dimension of time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beyond time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew what you were going to do and knows what others are going to do because He's God Almighty. Because He's God Almighty, He's going to know what you're going to do tomorrow and what you're going to do 100 years from now if you stay that long. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not living within time. But because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not punish you or reward you without giving you the chance to be a witness on yourself and actually do the action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most just. So on Judgment Day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though He knew what decisions you're going to make and what action you're going to do, even though He knew that, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most just, so you cannot judge somebody without seeing that they actually do the action. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though He's the most just, and even though He's the Lord and knows all that, but He still will hold a trial. He still will hold a trial and say, here is the evidence, look at what you did, and there's going to be like a video where you can actually see it. And there's going to be witnesses. Your body's going to be a witness, your thigh is going to be a witness, your tongue is going to talk, your hand is going to talk, and it's going to say everything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a complete court system. Videos, body, witnesses, and you actually took the action. All the court system is all set. Everything. You've got the videos, the sounds, the witnesses, your action, you did it, now you're held accountable. And that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually sets a court system, even on Judgment Day. There's no hisab, there's no one's going to be held accountable for something that they did not do. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not predestine to mean that you were controlled and you had no free will, but you actually had the free will, you took the decision, and no one's controlling you. Nobody's holding a joystick and moving you left or right. You had the free will, you took the decision, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew before you even took the decision, before you even had taken the decision, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you were going to take this decision. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's most just, lets everything be in a court system where you take the decision, but it doesn't mean that you are without free will.
What should a Muslim do if they feel they're being wronged by their mother or father?
What should a Muslim do? What should a Muslim do if they're being wronged by their mother and father? السؤال إذا الوالدين أخطأوا في حق الابن أو البنت. What should the Muslim do if they were being wronged by their mother or father? Number one is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن جَاهَدَكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. Continue. وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and if your parents fight you, the word is fight you, to associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then don't obey them in that particular request. But وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا, but maintain good relations with your parents. So what should I do if they wrong me, if they harm me? Number one is that it can happen that a parent may transgress the limit and sometimes go off in being concerned about you, or may go off in giving obligations to you and force you to do certain things. But the general rule, even if that person is not a Muslim, even if that person has gone away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the general rule is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put within their hearts to love you and be so keen on making you the best. And I speak of a mother. I know not every mother is like me, but I'll guarantee you that most mothers are like me. They would have a connection with their children that no other person in this world will be as strong as that connection between the mother and the child. The first heartbeat, the first kick to your mother was music. The first heartbeat to you when you were born, your mother's heartbeat to you was the most comforting thing. Your dad's voice, your dad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regarded him as your wali. Your dad is the most person that is concerned about you. You may sometimes feel, why is he so harsh on me? You as a young child, in any certain job, there's always certain qualifications, and the most qualifications they look for is education and experience. Girls, no matter how far you go with your education, even if you had a PhD and 2 PhDs and 3 PhDs, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, your dad and your mother, they have a lot more experience in life than you. Your dad and your mother will care about you and care about your future. They may sometimes hold certain opinions that indeed may be wrong, but even when you disagree with their opinion or you disagree with their idea, reject politely. If what they're requesting is not for your sake, reject politely. If you have the right to reject, but most of the times you have to obey if it's not haram. It is indeed hard because a lot of times the cultural differences and the list goes on and on, but you want to remember, when somebody would give you a piece of cookie, you would always feel, this person gave me a cookie one time. This person did me some kind of a good thing at one point. How is it with a person like your own mother and your own father? Even if they're not Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that they are the most people that deserve your respect. When the ayah that I had mentioned was revealed, وَإِن جَاهَدَكَ عَلَى أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. That ayah was revealed when a number of Sahaba, their parents tortured them because they had become Muslim and they ran away. So the ayah was revealed, this ayah was revealed, and they were ordered to come back and be with their parents and be good to their parents. Even though those parents were actually torturing them for no other reason than because they had chosen Islam. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders that they would come back despite all the torture, imagine all the other scenarios.
Before we get to the next question, I want to let you guys know, if you go to our Slido, sli.do, with the event code D207, you can like the questions that you really want to get answered, because there's a lot of questions and I don't know if we can get to all of them. So like the ones that you really want to get answered. The next question is, what rights do our siblings have on us? For example, if my dad chooses not to provide, if a dad chooses not to provide for his kids emotionally and financially, and then says the responsibility is on the oldest sibling.
Generally, it's actually the father's duty and the father's responsibility to provide for the family, and this is actually mandatory for him to do. But if, let's say, he cannot, then the sibling will be obligated to do whatever they can, as much as they can, whether to provide or to give the nasiha, to overlook their akhlaq, to overlook, and it actually goes in the different categories, to overlook their deed and to raise them in good deed, to maintain a good life, maintain good health, and maintain good education, and maintain good good chastity and preserve their chastity in order to make sure that they're secure, and finally preserve the financial part and maintain the financial part. So it goes in this order, and then whoever's responsible over the family has to do it in this order. Let's go for another question.
How can I change my negative friends that lead me to the wrong path when I've known them since childhood and care and love them? Any tips you can give?
So how can I maintain or replace my friends? Let me say it that way. Replace and find new friends.
Change them.
Change them? Oh.
They're negative, but she wants to lead them back.
Change? I love that question. Let me tell you guys one thing. Not always can you necessarily change your friends to mean you making them change. Not always. Sometimes you have to change your friends, especially when the friends have a large impact on you. You have to, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not change the situation that you're in unless you change what is within. A lot of times you may not have the control or the authority or the ability to change your friends. A lot of times it's actually harder to change your friends than finding new friends. You know why? Because they have known you for such a long time, they will at many times bring you that card of your past, but you used to do, and you will say, but I changed, but they're not gonna take it. It would be easier to find new friends than change your old friends. If you're not able to change your old friends by giving them nasiha, by encourage them to change the environment, to change the place that they go to, the place that they hang out in, and what they're doing for leisure time, for their entertainment, etc., then you get out of that group and find a new group. What if I can't find a new group? What should I do? If you cannot find the role model that you wish to see and imitate, you be the role model that you wish to find. I always say this, almost every single time I give a lecture. I always say, the role model that you hope to find, you be the role model that you wish to see. It's going to be so hard to find a role model, and everybody is looking for that role model. We're not infallible. Take the steps to be the role model that you wish to find. It's so easy, and especially in the time that we're living in. Everybody is trying to say that all these shuyukh are hypocrites. That's the trend that people are liking now. In order to say, see, nobody is perfect. And even these role models, they're not good, and we shouldn't even try to get to that level. This is the most dangerous trend that is right now being spread. You know why? Because there's always going to be salihin. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever says, man qala halaka an-nas fahuwa ahlakuhum, or faqad ahlakahum. The Prophet ﷺ says, whoever says that the people have been destructed, then there are two different narrations. He's the most destructed out of them, or he's the one that destructed all of them. There's always going to be khair. And the best khair that you will find are those that are warathat al-anbiya, those that inherited the ilm of al-anbiya, and those are the scholars. Indeed, scholars are not necessarily infallible. Scholars will still have their human side, but take the good in every example that you see. If you find that sister is good in her dhikr, is good in her akhlaq, that sister is good in her talab al-ilm, in seeking ilm, learn from that sister this and that, and learn from the other sister whatever you like. But to spread the trend that even shuyukh had fasadu, is extremely dangerous and extremely harmful, because that's not going to bring in but more fasad, because it's making us lose our trust even in the ulama, and lose our trust in finding any role model, and lose our trust that there's any goodness in the ummah. Yes, there is good, and yes, there are good scholars, and yes, there are good ulama, and yes, there are good role models to imitate, but nobody's infallible no matter what.
Is yoga done for the sake of stretching and fitness and meditation allowed if one also prays Salah? It is not meant to replace Salah in any way.
So if yoga generally is actually a Buddhist and a Hindu, actually a Hindu ritual. In its initial form, it's actually a Hindu ritual, and then it became something that was practiced in different religions, Buddhists and all those different groups, Confucius and all that. Now, generally speaking, imitating or plagiarizing any piece of a different religion is actually haram. But if the person is doing a form of stretching without doing the songs or the hymns or the different things that they are reading, or the bowing and the different things that the instructor may say that it has to be in a certain order, and you break that order a little bit, then just for the sake of stretching, it wouldn't be haram, with certain regulations. One, that you don't do these awrad or these prayers that they're doing or the words that they are doing. Two, is that the instructor is a female. Three, that you're dressed, of course, properly. And four, that you are doing it for the sake of stretching and not as a ritual. And there's no man around.
Is it permissible to marry a non-Muslim if he's willing to accept Islam from me?
Is it permissible to marry a non-Muslim? So generally speaking, number one is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had forbid that Muslim women marry non-Muslim men, period. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they are not lawful to them. That means the men are not lawful to the women, the Muslim women, and the Muslim women are not lawful to marry the non-Muslim men. When it came to the men, that part was mansukh, that part was abrogated. That part was abrogated that the women of Ahlul Kitab are lawful to marry for the Muslim men. Why? Number one is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الرجال قوامون على النساء. الرجال قوامون على النساء. That men are, the word is قوامون, and the word قوامون actually means supporters, actually means maintainers, actually means authority. It actually means all these things put together. All these things put together. For a Muslim woman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you a fact of men's nature and a fact in women's nature. A fact in men's nature is that they try to be the authority. It's a fact in their nature. A fact in men's nature, they want to be the preservers. They want to be the keepers. They want to be the presidents. And a fact in women's nature is that they're more compromising. Alhamdulillah. We're more compromising. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, الرجال قوامون على النساء. This is giving you a fact in men and women's nature. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, based on that fact, in men and women, regardless of their faith, that this was going to be a risk on your faith as a Muslim woman. If you were to marry a non-Muslim man, that was going to be a risking your faith, because if you marry a non-Muslim man, then there's going to be a whole dynamic within your life, financial, religious, legislature-wise, and all these different, the dynamics of a Muslim, it goes in each and every single corner, what you eat and what you drink and what you say and what you look at, even in intimacy on all levels. If a woman marries a non-Muslim man, there's a high chance that she's going to risk her faith little by little. Even if he says, I'm going to be tolerant of your faith, Islam goes in each and every single corner. But Islam forbid that the Muslim man, if he would marry a Christian or a Jewish woman, Islam forbid that he would force her into becoming Muslim. But that's not the same in other religions. And that's where millions were actually forced into Christianity throughout history. And same thing with Judaism. In Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you there's a nature that you cannot put your deen at risk because of a certain de facto, a certain fact about his nature and your nature, and you're risking your deen, you're risking even your marriage, because there's a high chance that it's not going to work out. Because you come with a whole package of legislature, perceptions in life, actions, that's a whole package. There's a very high chance that you're going to risk your marriage, a successful marriage, and risk even your deen. If this man is saying that he's becoming Muslim for her, then the question is he understanding that Islam is becoming Muslim for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So you become Muslim not for a woman, but you become Muslim for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if he's becoming Muslim for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's sincere in his Islam, then لا بأس. Especially if he was sincere and serious in his Islam, then she can actually marry him. But if he's not sincere in his Islam, and this can become something that can put her deen at risk, and of course, if he's not sincere with his Islam, and he's saying, I'm becoming Muslim for you, then that's not considered that the person has become a Muslim. That means he's just doing it as, all right, whatever, I'll just say it. So if he's sincere and really becomes Muslim, then it would be halal. If he's becoming Muslim for her, then that's not a halal marriage.
My high school MSA wants to do a girls only prom as an alternative to the regular one, but there will still be music and etc. How can I advise them to not?
There are several things here. So with the issue of halal prom, sisters, there are certain things that just cannot be Islamicized. You just cannot. You can't bring a Muslim Lady Gaga. It doesn't work. You can't have a Britney Spears, that a Madonna, or doing some kind of a club, and make it certain things that you just can't Islamicize it. You understand what I'm saying? You just can't Islamicize it. It can't, because it's kind of like you're looking at the core. Islam has a totally different core than the other groups. The other groups, the core that they come from is pleasure, is dunya. But you as a Muslim, you come from a different core. There are whole sets of regulations, all right? Whole sets of regulations that you maintain in order to keep your heart at dhikr, in order to keep your actions at dhikr, in order to keep your mind at dhikr. So let me modify the question a little bit. Is it okay to have a group of girls only, all right? Well, they're just gathering and they're dressed up and dancing together. Number one is that it depends what kind of music we have. All right, so this is a different question. Music, are you guys ready for the music? Okay, music scholars had different opinions on what type of instruments are allowed. Number one, the first opinion said that all instruments are not allowed, period. Second opinion said no, the percussion instruments are allowed. Third opinion said percussion and certain things that don't make some kind of a harmony in a certain way, like flutes and all those types of flutes are haram. The fourth opinion said that all musical instruments are halal. All right? There's actually more opinions, but this is really fast. All right? Now, there are 16 different hadiths relating to music and a number of ayat. Are you guys with me or are you guys lost? A number of ayat, but generally speaking, I'm here just talking about the musical instruments. I'm not talking about the lyrics yet. The musical instrument, I do not regard that musical instruments are haram, but I do not regard musical instruments are halal either. So what does that mean? It leaves it within the gray area. This is part of al-mushtabihat. This is part of the gray area. I did a research in 80 pages just on music, without the lyrics, just on the musical instruments. There is no ijma', there is no consensus that musical instruments are haram, and there is no consensus that it's halal either. When something is between the two, it leaves it within the gray area and better to stay away from it, but I wouldn't necessarily regard it as halal. When things are in the gray area, better to keep away from it. The other part, the lyrics, if the lyrics contained any kind of a description of haram relations, that would be haram. So girls describing guys' features, or girls describing, girls, guys, whatever, describing body features that are exciting certain feelings or pleasures, etc., that would be haram. 2, if it contains shirk. During my teenage years, there was a singer, his name was Bryan Adams, and he used to sing, "Everything I do it for you." That's shirk. You guys, I'm way older than you, okay? The other thing, if the words contained any promotion, so if the words contained promoting evil actions, drinking, dating, outside relations, right now, homosexuality and all that stuff, then that type of promotion in that lyric and that type of music would be haram. All right? So those are just general things. But you want to remember one thing, is that music cannot be separated from the life and the environment of music. The environment that comes with music is a bigger fitna than the music itself. The music in itself, right now, you can't separate it from all those video clips, because those come with a whole package of fitna that is even bigger than the music and the song itself. Fitna, it's okay. Fitna means a trial. Fitna means something that is exciting certain pleasureful feelings, and it's taking you into a slippery slope of different inclinations that are away from your spirituality. Is it clear? That's what fitna is. Without you realizing, it's taking you into a different world. So with that question, if they're doing a prom, I just want them to hear all that I said about music, lyrics, and girls dressing up. And with the girls dressing up, it's very important to remember that there are certain things, even if it's halal, There are certain things it just doesn't befit a believing woman. So for example, it doesn't befit a believing woman to wear certain clothing that has no purpose but to enhance certain body parts and send certain messages. It just doesn't befit you. You're a Muslim woman. Dress up. And you guys understand what I mean by it's okay to dress up, but dress up decently. And there's a difference. You guys understand what I'm saying? Dress up decently. Certain clothes are to only be worn in front of a husband, not in front of women. No, seriously. They're only to be worn in front of the husband, not even in front of your kids. And it's so sad when I see certain women, it's like a party, and then I don't understand. Can you explain to me why you're dressed like that in front of me? No, seriously. I have no other, the other message that I'm understanding is what all of you are understanding. If you're dressed in a particular way, the only message that you're trying to send me is that you look, I don't want to say the word. Is that really something that belongs for a Muslim woman? I don't want to say the word. But in mu'minat, a mu'mina, there are certain things that just... A very important Tunisian scholar. He wrote in his book, and he said the main reason why the Prophet ﷺ said that, for example, they used to do certain writing or certain designs with their teeth and designs with their faces and certain tattooing and certain thinning with their eyebrows. And he said the reason why the Prophet ﷺ had forbid these, look at the hikmah, look at the wisdom with Talib ibn Ashur. He said it is really because it's not haram in itself per se, but it is haram because that was the fashion and the trend of the fasiqat women, of the women that were deviant women. There are certain things, if that's the trend of deviant women, don't practice it. It doesn't suit you as a pious woman. It doesn't suit you as a woman that has the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in her heart. It doesn't suit you as a woman of principle. You guys understand what I'm saying, right? Okay, move on to the next question.
This is a pretty popular question on social media. Is there a cap on how much I should ask for my meher?
Is there a cap? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give her a pious husband that's rich enough to and be able to afford the cap on the mahr. There isn't a limit to the highest number, but there is a limit to the lowest number. There isn't a limit to the highest number, so she can ask for 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 1 billion. But if you're going to ask, I do matchmaking, if you're going to ask for that high number of mahr and the guy can't afford it, trust me, not many guys are going to come forward because they're going to feel, well, I can't afford it, might as well go look for somebody else. So you want to put that in perspective. There is a limit to the lowest number, and scholars debated whether Quran, the guy memorizing all the Quran or even a surah, is considered a reasonable mahr or not. Scholars debated on that. Scholars also debated at the lowest number of mahr. Is it a dinar? Is it less? Is it something? But it has to be something that is worthy and something that is valuable. You guys gotta laugh at this. So yesterday, every single day I read for my kids from the book. It's called Zad al-Ma'ad. And my son, I was telling them, I was reading about the mahr for Habiba, the Prophet's wife. And I said that her mahr was paid off by Najashi. And my son, he's only 8 years old, he asked, so does the man have to pay mahr? I said, yeah, a man has to pay mahr. He said, I'll just take her to the dollar store and tell her to choose whatever she wants. the dollar store. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ya Rabbi, give them hidayah. So ladies, just make sure your future husbands don't take you to the dollar store to choose from your mahar. All right? Not Walmart.
الرجال قوامون على النساء. My brother recites this ayah, which means you can talk about it, you can say the definition. My brother, الرجال قوامون على النساء.
Okay.
My brother recites this ayah whenever he tries to prove a point that Islamically he's higher than me. Is he right or is he just being sexist?
الرجال قوامون على النساء has nothing to do with him being better or in other words, superior or inferior. It has nothing to do with this. This is actually talking about certain management within the household. This is not talking about inferior or superior, because yeah, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says, وَمَن يَعْمَلْ صَالِحًا مِنْ ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنثَىٰ فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبَةً. If you do good or you do bad, if you do good, whether you're female or male, then you're going to be resurrected in a good life. It has nothing to do with you being male or female. In fact, the ayat that mentioned the evil people throughout history, where most of them in the Quran that were mentioned, majority were actually men. 2 women only were mentioned in the Quran. Who? امرأة لوط وامرأة نوح. Only 2 women were mentioned in the Quran to being inferior or to being as deviant. Not inferior, but deviant. But when it came to mentioning women and being a good example, it says ضرب الله مثلا للذين آمنوا امرأة فرعون and امرأة and Maryam bint Imran. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who do you give an example to? You give an example to say, well, this is لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. So for all the believers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for all the believers, He says, there's a good example that I want you to take as a role model. Who do you put as a role model? Somebody that is of a high level, somebody that is on a pedestal. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts these as 2 women for all the believers to imitate. In other words, they were their role models. So to say that he is better because this ayah is actually very dangerous, because it can carry within it wrong interpretation for the Quran. And it can carry within it bringing his sister into feeling some sort of hate to the Quran because he did a wrong translation for the Quran. He did a wrong translation and he misinterpreted the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he would be the cause for his sister to having some kind of a deviation or some kind of a feeling, a wrong feeling against the Quran, and he would have been the reason for it. This is really dangerous. This ayah is not saying that they are better. This ayah is talking about nature, because the ayah says الرجال قوامون على النساء. It didn't say, this is talking about all men and all women. This is talking about all men and all women in terms of nature, that there are certain things in their nature and that's making them responsible. In this ayah, in Islam, responsibility is taklif and not tashrif. What does that mean? Taklif, responsibility. This is taklif. This is a responsibility and not ownership. This ayah is not here suggesting ownership and honor, but this ayah is suggesting responsibility. So the reason why you're responsible is because I've given you certain qualities, but you better do the right thing. And that's why the ayah ends, إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلِيًّا كَبِيرًا. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala end it with عَلِيًّا كَبِيرًا? Because this is telling the guys, listen, I've given you certain qualities, but you dare transgress your limit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is عَلِيًّا كَبِيرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most high and most big, and He will retaliate for the sake of that woman. When you say إن الله كان عليا كبيرا, this is in order to say that don't you take advantage of certain qualities or certain powers that you may have as a man and then transgress your limits and not act justly with a woman. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلِيًّا كَبِيرًا. This is really dangerous. This is actually threatening. This is bringing a threat if you transgress that limit.
It says, Salah, my question is on alcohol and Salah. I know prayers won't be accepted for 40 days. Does that mean that the person should not be praying?
No, the scholars that for the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ actually says if a person would drink alcohol, that their salah is not accepted. This is not that their salah is not accepted in itself. The salah saqatat al-farida, meaning the salah would be accepted, but the reward is reduced. The reward is reduced. And this is actually what scholars, this is the explanation that scholars said, and that's why if a person drinks, that they would still have to pray. Why would they be still ordered to pray if it's not accepted? No, it's accepted, but the reward is reduced. Just as, for example, another question. Let's say we had a dog in the house, or we had a picture in the house, sculpture in the house. Does that mean I can't pray in there? Yes, you can. The salah in itself is accepted, but the reward is reduced because you didn't get the barakah, you didn't get the blessing of dogs being present and the sculptures being there, and the malaika don't enter a place with that has a sculpture or a dog. So the reward is reduced, the blessing is reduced, but the farida is still accepted.
Okay, this is a follow-up question. What happens to a Muslim that neglects or does not perform salah?
That doesn't perform salah. Well, for not performing salah, the scholars actually had different opinions on whether the person is kafir or not. This is really dangerous, guys. Scholars had different opinions on whether the person not performing salah is kafir or not, is really Muslim or not. And this is a very big issue because the Sahaba and even the later generations didn't know such a thing as a Muslim leaving salah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that in Surah Al-Muddathir, that on Judgment Day they'll be asking the people in hellfire, what brought you here? The first thing they'll answer, قَالُوا لَمْ نَكُ مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ. When they ask, مَا سَلَكُكُمْ فِي سَقَرَ? What did they respond? The first question that they asked, what brought you in Saqar? What brought you in hellfire? And they said, قَالُوا لَمْ نَكُ مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ. We didn't used to perform our prayers. وَلَمْ نَكُ نُطْعِمُ الْمِسْكِينَ. And we did not feed the needy. Now when you look at the first response, Salah is that charger. You know, a few days, somebody said that they had a mental illness, but they don't want anybody to tell them about salah. One thing, mental illness outside of chemical imbalances, that's a different story. I'm talking about the psychology part, not the psychiatry part. What we are seeing right now, like I mentioned earlier, the rise of those depressions and all that is really when you live a life and you don't have a GPS to know where you're heading, you're going to live between two things, khawf and huzn. You're going to live in fear because you don't know where you're going, and you're going to live in sorrow, depression, because you're not sure what's going to happen tomorrow. You're not sure why some evil things happen to you, why mom and dad are constantly fighting, and the list goes on and on. So you start feeling that sadness, that sorrow inside your heart. And when you feel that, the best way to connect is, why do people feel that depression? It's because they're connecting themselves with the materialistic causes of that certain thing in their life. And they're not connecting themselves with the Lord Almighty that is behind every good thing. That's why we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Barr. He's behind every single good thing. Just when you lose hope, just when things are going in the wrong direction in your life, or just when you feel that you have gotten so weak, remember to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the source of all goodness. And that's why for a believer, they're always connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen is the first start. Recharging them, think positively. That's why you repeat the Al-Fatiha a few times a day. Why? Because it's asking you, think positively and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the good things that you have. You might say, what good things? And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you. You've got so many good things that you may not realize. Think positively. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is connecting you with thinking positively and thinking about what? The beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala you're seeing, all the different mercy and all the different good qualities around you. It was really because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the founder of all these good things. Even when something may go wrong, remember, connect with your Lord Almighty, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the source of all good things. There's no better way to connect. Then Allahu Akbar. What is Allahu Akbar? Allahu Akbar is not just Allah is great, but Allahu Akbar is telling you, no matter how big or how much you scrutinized a certain problem or you scrutinized any matter in your life, you want to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beyond all that. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your number one priority. And that's what Allahu Akbar means. And that's why for a Muslim, it takes a lot of dhikr. It takes a lot of repetition to remind you, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, with every single move. It goes from a word of mouth to a word that's affecting the heart to a word that you live. And that's how it becomes a word from a level of Islam where it's just your mind resonating to your actions and your senses, living it to the point that you actually live as if you can, if you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as if you can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's it, ihsan. There's no way to maintain that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a Muslim unless you are willing to wake up for Fajr and willing to raise that blanket and go to the water and make your wudu and say, Ya Allah, before even the sun rises, I'm going to rise to say Allahu Akbar. And you go into the noon prayer, Ya Allah, I'm busy, but nothing is more important than Allahu Akbar. You go into the Asr prayer, Ya Allah, I'm still busy, but Allahu Akbar. Maghrib, I just want to relax, but Ya Allah, Allahu Akbar. It's time for me to sleep and I can't wait to go to bed, but Ya Allah, Allahu Akbar. That dhikr has the power to affect your spirituality and even increase your spirituality and even take away all the depression that you could be going through. Many times people will say, no, I don't want somebody to remind me in order to tell me that I want the dhikr, to do it in order to get out of my depression. Remember, there's no way that you can change the situation that you're in unless you take the step to change your situation. If you don't take the step, nothing's going to change. If you don't decide to go to school and study, you're not going to get a degree in your nail like that. And that's the same thing. In order to elevate yourself, You can't elevate yourself unless you live with elevation. And that's Allahu Akbar. And that's why you say Akbar, because it means elevation. And that's how it rises your estate.
What do you do if your husband does not pray?
What do you do if your husband does not pray? It depends on the situation. So this would be, this is more of a person-to-person question, because is it just the prayer or is it more? Can we do da'wah? Can we advise this woman to do da'wah? Is he affecting her iman? How far is it going? When you leave prayer, it becomes like a bead where everything starts becoming loose. It doesn't just end with salah. Once you leave salah, then everything else is going to fall one bead after another, and it becomes a havoc right in front of you. Because what else is left with their Islam? If the prayer is not there, the shahada, then we would look at the situation within that marriage. Do we have kids involved? How much can she maintain? I would say more this is a personal question than anything else.
Okay, it says, is it true that if you disobey your parents, your future children will disobey you? And if I disobey them, does that mean they disobeyed their parents?
No, it doesn't necessarily come like that, but العمل الصالح, piety does pay off. Piety does pay off. Ladies, this is really important. When you actually do what is good without you realizing, there's a certain blessing that you may realize and not realize. In fact, piety will even pay off in generations to come. What's the evidence? وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that because these two orphan boys, they had a pious father, and some scholars said it was a great-great-grandfather. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala paid it off even for the great-great-grandchildren. When you're pious, whether to your parents or you're pious in general, it will affect your children. It will affect your deen. It will affect your money. It will affect everything that's around you. It's a blessing that goes beyond yourself. In fact, even on Judgment Day, listen to this. In Surah Al-Hadid, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the kuffar, the munafiqeen. The munafiqeen are standing in a row, and the believers are standing in a row. The munafiqeen are bragging. What do they say? The mu'mineen, their light is so strong that the light is actually seen, and light, it's even reflecting on the munafiqeen. So the munafiqeen would say, انظرونا نقتبس من نوركم. Look at us. Your light is actually showing on us. Their light is showing on the munafiqeen. And they were bragging about it. See, we got some of your light right there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, قِيلَ ارْجِعُوا. Go back. No, you can't be even around them, because it looks like you didn't learn the lesson. And that's where we would see that in the light of salah, the light of piety affects and goes beyond than your children. It affects all those that are around you. It affects those that are around you. It affects your family. It affects everybody that sees you, will see and realize that this person has piety. There's a sakina that you can feel. If that's the case with the people around you, how is it with the children? Be pious. In the highest level of piety, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. The highest level of evilness is associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be bad to the parents. Likewise, by definition, the highest level of piety is worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not associating partners with him and being good to the parents. All right? So that, since it's the highest piety, make sure you live in that piety in order to spread it onto the generations to come. Okay, two more. The jinn one. Everybody's gonna wake up. Okay, go ahead.
So when you're praying behind an imam, are you supposed to read any surahs or you just listen?
Different opinions between scholars on the Fatiha, and if it's Jahriya, I'll make the answer short. So yes, even though there are differences of opinions, but generally, if the imam is reading out loud, at least read the Fatiha. That's a preponderant ruling with differences of opinions between scholars. If the imam, whether reading out loud or reading secretly, at least read the Fatiha. At least read the Fatiha, but if he's reading another surah, stay quiet, even if you memorized it, and listen to what he's reading. It's up to you.
Okay. So is exorcism real?
That's gonna see. Most people are right now on their phones. Now they're gonna wake up. Can jinn enter our bodies? Everybody woke up. How many people say yes? Can jinn بيقدر يلبس الإنسان ولا لا؟ يدخل الجن فيك. How many people say yes? How many people say no? Okay, I see one hand and there goes like that. Jinn can't go inside our bodies. Can jinn control us? I'm asking. Jinn can control us. Yes, no. Raise your hands if you feel that jinn can control us. If you talk to it? Okay. All right. Ready for the answer? No? Don't worry, it won't be that spooky, I promise. You guys, let me tell you a story. A jinn story. This is real. All right? This is real, ladies. So when I was doing my PhD, I had cameras installed on the upper part of my house. And in the upper part of my house, the cameras were installed because I was studying just to make sure, monitor the kids who woke up and everything. Now I'm downstairs and I saw that my daughter woke up and the lights were off and all of a sudden I can hear her reading. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ. I was like, well, my daughter's hyped with Iman, I guess. Then she goes, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. And then she goes, and I'm like, all right. My mom was living with me at the time, and she was like, what's wrong with her? And I was like, well, mashallah, the girl has good, high Iman. Now, all of us was, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. And my mom was like, I'm not sure something is, something's fishy. Why don't you go up there and see what's going on? And she, of course, she just woke up. So I go and go upstairs, and there she is, standing in front of a laundry piled up that needs to be folded. I turn on the light, and I'm like, Fatima, what's going on? She wipes her eyes and looks at the laundry. Oh, I thought that was the shaitan. Ladies, shaitan does not live in your laundry room, okay? That's exactly what happened. All right, now, going to the question. Ready? Scholars had different opinions on whether the jinn can actually go into your body or not. The reason why they had different opinions is really for the same exact texts. Text number 1 is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the people that do riba. وَمَا يَقُومُ إِلَّا كَمَا يَقُومُ الَّذِي يَتَخَبَّطُهُ الشَّيْطَانُ مِنَ الْمَسِّ. That the way that they rise as if they were pricked by shaitan. Now, some scholars said that the word mess actually means to touch and not to go inside. The other scholars said no. The ayah says يَتَخَبَّطُهُ الشَّيْطَانُ الْمَسِّ to mean that as they're moving, that there's some kind of a movement as if they're having a seizure. That was another opinion. The other scholars responded, wait a minute, this is actually saying that they rise as if, tashbih. So if I were to say, what's your name? Fadila is as beautiful as a flower. That doesn't necessarily mean that she has become a flower. This is tashbih. This is more of like a metaphor. A metaphor does not necessarily mean that it has to be true. It doesn't have to be true. Now, that's where the scholars have different opinions. This is just one example. There are other examples from the hadith, but I'm just giving the ayah because it's the strongest one. At the end of the day, is that generally we do see some things that we may not have clear explanation as to why these things happen. Such as, you do ruqya for somebody, and all of a sudden the person is yawning, or the person is shaking, or the person says, I feel burning in my feet, or I feel burning in my hands, or throws up, okay? Do I necessarily have any evidence that the result of this vomiting or shaking is because the jinn is inside? I don't have any evidence. But these things are ghaibiyya. These things are part of the unseen. So to say, well, use rational evidences and say, well, she is made of cells, and we've got blood, and we've got all these different organs, and we can open her up and we still don't find a jinn. The jinn is an outside world. It has a totally different feature. It's not something that you could experiment using science because it's ghaib. It's outside of what we can experiment. So to say, well, we opened up the body, there was nothing, this is ghaib. Just as hasad. Hasad is ghaib. There's no way that we can somehow, dissect the eye and say, where does the hasad come out from? This is ghaib. This is ghaib. With things that are ghaib, that's why I said differences of opinions between scholars on this matter, but unfortunately, the obsession talking about the topic of jinn has become a possession. Are you guys with me here? People are so obsessed with the topic that they have become possessed with the topic. Yeah, of course, if you're going to keep on talking about water, you're going to get thirsty. You understand what I'm saying? And that's the same thing. When we look at it, this doesn't negate that is possible. I would tell you some observations, but I don't know one. Ladies, please be aware, no one whatsoever can necessarily tell you that they can evaluate or examine a person and say, this person has jinn in him, or this person has sihr in him, or this person is reacting that way due to evil eye. There's no way that anybody can do that. And if anybody claims that they have any powers or any knowledge to know whether this is hasad, sihr, or otherwise, they're nothing but liars. There is nothing in the books of fiqh, nothing in the books of aqidah where it tells you here's the diagnosis, here are the symptoms to differentiating between sihr and magic and whatever it is. In fact, although the hadith of the sihr of the Prophet ﷺ happening to the Prophet ﷺ is an authentic hadith and mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari, but even the Prophet ﷺ himself did not know that that was magic, that was done unto him, until Jibreel alayhi salam was the one that told him that this was a result of magic, and the magic is thrown in the well, in an abandoned well by Labid ibn al-Asam in the land of Bani Zurayq. That's the only way he knew. He wouldn't have known. He wouldn't have known if Jibreel alayhi salam did not tell him. To actually say, here's my evidences that this person is inflicted with this, is nothing but a liar trying to make money out of you. You do your own ruqya. Ruqya is simple. Hold your hands like this. Read Qul Huwallahu Ahad 3 times. Qul A'udhu Birabbil Falaq 3 times. Qul A'udhu Birabbin Nas 3 times. Blow 3 times and wipe on your face. Or you could find Ruqya Shar'iyya. It's all the ayat that may relate to Ruqya on YouTube. Very simple. Very simple. Ruqya is a healing, not because of who read it, but because of that being the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Listen to it or read it.
You can listen to it or you can read it. If you read it, that would be better. If you read it, that would be better. Last question, or are we finished? All the questions? How many questions are there? Let me see, maybe I can answer them super fast. Where is it? Do this one. If a woman is raped and becomes pregnant, is she allowed to abort the baby? No, she's not allowed to abort the baby unless, this is a case by case, unless there was a major harm on the woman's psychology and a number of different things, and only if she did not pass 120 days of pregnancy. She can abort if she did not pass 120 days of pregnancy, but this is a case by case. She would have to actually bring the case to a scholar of fiqh and see if that specific case if it's allowed or not. So this is not a general rule, but really fast. If the pregnancy is more than 120 days, generally speaking, she can't abort it unless for specific reasons and unless this is a case by case. If a woman cannot have a child, she can't carry. Is surrogacy allowed? No, it's not allowed unless it's between the husband and the wife. Does the hijab, the rule of hijab apply to children you have adopted but did not breastfeed? Hijab is obligatory to wear in front of all non-mahrams, and adopted children are not included as part of your mahram. How do I balance between not doubting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I believe I've answered that one. Is wearing wigs and hair extensions permitted? Differences of opinions between scholars on synthetic wigs and synthetic extensions. But all scholars agree that if it's real wig, meaning wig made of real hair and extensions made of real hair, are haram, but they have differences of opinions. Majority said that wigs and hair extensions, majority said even if they're synthetic, they're haram. Abu Yusuf from the Hanafi madhab said that if it's a wig, well, wigs actually, Maliki madhab also said that wigs, if they're synthetic, it's not haram. And for hair extensions, Abu Yusuf from the Hanafi madhab said that hair extensions, if they're synthetic, they're not haram. What should a Muslim do if they're, okay, we mentioned that one. If a good practicing sister wants to get married but cannot find good brothers, especially when there's a lack of good guys in the community. I wouldn't necessarily say that their community lacks good guys. No, there are good guys, just as there are good girls too. Just as there's good guys and there's good girls, but you can seek matchmaking, you can seek online, I don't mean Facebook and that, but I mean like online matchmaking websites with certain regulations. There is a website that I used to work with, it's called islamicmatchmakers.com. You can do that. You can talk to the imam within your Masjid Islamic Center and actually tell them that you're interested in getting married and match you with somebody that you might be interested in. Tell your parents, tell the community you're looking to get married, and people know who you are. They'll hook you with the right people that match you. And you be the right person, and the right person will be there for you. I do matchmaking, I can probably help. What's the proper hijab? We mentioned that one. Fulfilling obligations, we mentioned that one. My brother likes holding the ayah that states that men are greater than women. What other questions do we not answer?
Oh, there's one, is kombucha permissible?
Is kombucha permissible? Yes, it is. Kombucha, what is it called? Kombucha, it's a certain kind of a drink that has not alcohol in it, but it was said that it has some level of some kind of chemical that people might consider it alcohol, but no, it's not haram.
The last question is that the one about what is your proof of the authenticity of the Quran?
Oh, that's a whole lecture.
Yeah.
What's the proof of the authenticity of Quran and Sunnah? That's actually a whole lecture. I do actually do lectures to answer these types of questions. In Gems of Light, we're on 5820 74th Avenue North in Brooklyn Park. You could actually come to that masjid. We've got Quran classes. We also have fiqh of marriage on Fridays. Islam 101, which I answer these types of questions on Thursday, and most of the classes are 5:30 to 7. So join us there. Again, the place is called Gems of Light. Our website right now, we're still working on it, but it's in Brooklyn Park, and you guys can send me text messages. You can 612-483-2893, and you can send me text messages, and I'll send you the address, or I'll even add you to our WhatsApp Gems of Light group.
It says, I post pictures on my private female-only social media page. Am I still committing a sin for doing that?
Well, if the pictures are decent and she is very sure that no non-mahram man is going to see it, it's not haram, but it would be disliked because you're not sure if any of those brothers of those girls or anybody can get a hold of those accounts. That can happen. So preserve yourself and preserve your modesty, and don't make it easily accessible. Right now, it's so easy to hack any laptop and hack any account and see all those pictures, and it can happen. With pictures of hijab, it's not haram, but it depends on the pose. It's not, I see pictures of sisters putting profiles of, she's with her hijab, but she's posing. Yeah, explain that to me. Explain it to me. So, no, seriously, I mean, the pose is, what is that pose? Or sticking their tongues out. I mean, what is that pose? Can you explain it to me? I mean, it's... I'll just stay quiet, you guys, because you guys understand it. It's not decent. Hijab is not just an attire. Hijab is a moral. It's an ethic. It's a behavior. It's a principle. It's a principle. Principles of trying to seduce or be silly, it doesn't match your high principle of Allahu Akbar. Wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Sisters, jazakumullah khairan. I hope I wasn't boring. Lots of questions. And by the way, I do something similar to that the first Saturday of every month. Is it the first Saturday? Yeah, it's the first Saturday of every month at NWICC Plymouth Masjid. So join us there, inshallah. Come close. Well, I mean, I don't mind. I'll come on every... I'm flexible, so if you guys organize something, I'd be happy to come.
Okay, Jazakallah
Brooklyn
khair.
Park Masjid, we do that there. Yeah, yeah, so join us. I can come, so if you guys organize an event, I will come, inshallah. All right.
Okay, Jazakallah khair to Sheikh Aysha Wazwaz, and thank you all for coming. I just want to say we're doing registration for the conventions this weekend in the other masjid. So go ahead and get your tickets if you haven't already. And if you've already, oh my God, she's sitting right there. Right there, Selma, she's waving her hand. She's a laptop.
She's on.
Yeah, she's a laptop on her lap. Okay.